Hello, this is Martin Brossman,
And this is Elyse Archer.
and welcome to Linking into Sales, the social selling podcast. We've got Greg off working on other projects, and so it's going to be the two of us with a special show today around sales coaching. But before we begin, we want to mention our sponsor, that's NC State Technology Training Solutions, and they have a large group of excellent professional education for the RTP area. You can learn about it at linkingintosales.com/NCSUTTS. Some of the courses are the social selling class that Greg Hyer and I teach there for LinkedIn, and then I teach a social media management class, and then they have great technical people teaching professional photography, all types of skills, Excel, and a fantastic team to work for. So we really want to thank them for being our sponsor. And this is a exciting show. We're going to get right to it. And our topic today is Elyse and I talked about, since we both do coaching, business coaching and sales coaching, to have a dialogue back and forth on it. And I'll pass it over to you about sales coaching. So Elyse, I'll hand it over to you now.
Sure. So we figured tonight we might go inside the minds of some sales coaches, which is a scary place to be.
Yes.
Sometimes. I don't know about your mind, Martin, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want other people to see inside my mind. But we thought it might be cool to kind of give, some background on how we both got started, and if it's something you're interested in, how you might get started as well, and just talk about what are some of the things you should look for if you don't have a coach, or if you don't want a coach, what are some of the things you can do to hold yourself accountable as well, so that you get that increased revenue. So I'm actually curious, Martin, for you, I don't know if I even know how you got started as a coach. I know you have far more experience than me, so I'd love to hear from you a little bit of your background and how you got started.
Well, you're a superhero in it, as I've heard from some of your clients. So I'll give a
I
little
pay
bit
them.
of. That's right. Keep paying them. So yeah, we want to insight into the coaching. For me, mine goes back to about 1991, and I was in corporate America, IBM, attempting to find out where I fit in. I had spent 4 years getting into there, and I wanted to find out where I fit in, and it wasn't working for me. I took a personality profile, and they said 90% of the IBMers match this, and you don't overlap in any of them. So I got pretty discouraged because I was excellent with customers, and I won their highest IBM Mean Service Award in a short time, and I went, I'm not seem to be fitting into this particular tech support world here. And then somebody came to me. My clients loved me, but they'd come back and they'd say, your advice changed my life, and that simple thing you mentioned got me to work with my partners at work better. And I thought, well, this isn't therapy, and this isn't what I'm being paid to do. I mean, what is it? And someone came to me and handed me an article. Kate Vasecki. I'm so glad I think I got her name right. And she said, you'd be good at this. And she handed me this article at the time on life coaching. And I read it, and I thought, I kept putting it aside, and I went, look, this is not working for me. Let me take this on and see if I can carve out a livelihood. And I worked with some coaches and some other people and started defining it. There really wasn't coaching training that much around 1991, 92, like there is today. And I literally started building out what it would look like, and had a profound insight that sounds so obvious, that I didn't need to climb a ladder. I didn't need to accomplish anything. I needed to cover my bills and have a life that I loved. And to me, a life that I loved had to be of contribution to others in some way. So that's where it all came about. And I built up. I worked with co-op students. We might tell some good stories on that, of the co-op students. And and I said, give me all the co-op students at IBM. And then I said, and part of your co-op program is business coaching. They go, what's that? And they were my guinea pigs to work with. One now has a family and kid, and he claims that our coaching really helped set up his whole life. And he's a happy father, and he's in the career he loves. And he claims that was key, and several others that I worked with. So I started getting results, and I wasn't someone who naturally had a lot of confidence. I was very self-critical. So I really used the tools to reinvent myself. And I also realized I needed a mission big enough to inspire me to move forward, and came up with a personal mission, which I don't share that often, but I'll share here, is helping people live lives that are so wonderful that they'll be moved to tears by their own life on their deathbed. And so that's the engine hidden behind all this business and others that gets me up in the morning to move forward. So that was a long answer to a question, but hopefully it was interesting, and love to hear, how did you get into it and what got you into it as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's powerful stuff. For me, I've always loved sales, so I've always done sales jobs. There's something about having the control over what I make and not being limited by a certain amount that I love. I don't know what it is about it, but it drives me. So all the way back to like when I was in college, I worked 5 different sales jobs at once. I didn't have to, but I'm either like really sick or just didn't want to go to class or something. But I just hustled. I sold pens, clothing, I mean, just all sorts of stuff. And I actually graduated college with a journalism degree, but very quickly realized that I would never be able to buy anything that I actually really wanted with what I would make from a journalism degree. So got into digital marketing sales out of college, did that for about 8 to 9 years. And I was always really successful. I was always one of the top performers, but it was hard. Like it was hard. I would work myself to the bone to achieve those numbers. I'm very competitive naturally. And I really just drove myself into the ground. I was unhealthy. I was getting up at crazy hours, like 2 a.m. I was going to bed late. I felt so out of control with the work volume that was necessary to get there, to get to the level that I wanted to get to. And it took me a good 5 or 6 years to realize that maybe there's another way. Like maybe it doesn't have to be this hard. And that was when I really started my personal development journey. And I remember it started with, I was sitting out on my patio and just flipping through a copy of Success magazine, which my stepmom had gotten me as a Christmas gift a year ago. And I, kind of dabbled in it, but never really got into it. But I was flipping through the magazine and saw an ad for The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And something in it, something about it triggered me. And I thought, you know what, for some reason, I need to read this book. I read it. It started an insane journey into personal development, improving myself. And I remember coming across a quote from Jim Rohn, which is now kind of the quote that I live by, which is, in order to have more, we have to first become more. So I took my focus from just how much prospecting can I squeeze in a day? How many more calls can I do? How many more meetings can I go on? How much more aggressive can I get with my clients, with my closing strategies, to, hey, maybe I should focus more on myself and on actually building myself up to be the type of person who attracts the clients I want and will give value to those clients, and also building systems into my day so that I'm not so all over the place and just feeling so overwhelmed all the time. And that transition was life-changing for me because I realized that I could actually make more money and feel more in control with everything. And so towards the latter part of my digital advertising sales career, I actually started coaching and training other people on how to do the same thing. And it was so incredible and so gratifying. And actually last year is when I went full time. So I'm a newbie in this compared to you. But there was something in me that said, it's time, like it's time to go. You have to give this a shot full time. So I quit my job in June of last year. I had 6 months worth of savings, and it was make or break. Like I knew I had to find a way to make it happen, but there was something in my gut telling me that it would all work out if I just trusted and had faith. And I had actually started my own coaching business, six-figure sales coaching, designed to really help sales professionals make it over that first 100K earnings hurdle. Um, but about a month later, I actually had the opportunity to partner with a company called Southwestern Consulting Group, who I had always admired incredibly from afar. So if anybody out there is a Rory Vaden, Take the Stairs fan, a lot of salespeople like that book, that's that group. And so I actually had the opportunity to partner with them and kind of run my business in conjunction with them. And it's been incredible. It's been incredible. I feel like I learn more from my clients sometimes than I could learn from anyone else. But like you said, it's about giving back. It's about significance. And not only helping people make more money, but also helping people see a greater version of themselves that's possible is so compelling to me. So that was my very, very long-winded answer to that question.
No, that's really true. I feel very blessed when I'm coaching. My joke is often I hear things that come out of my mouth. I want to stop with them and go, "Did you hear me say that? That was brilliant!" Because and so I believe that's when we're in the right place. Either sometimes speaking, when I'm talking, I'll get signals with groups where I need to say this. I won't know where it is, and someone will come up to me after the event and go, "How did you know to speak directly to me?" And I don't know where that stuff occurs, but I'm sure you've had that too, where you get the in coaching the logical mind, and then the listening with, I call it listening with my whole body, the intuitive part, to go, what is needed here now? What is needed here now? And really converting myself into a tool to be of service to them. And that gets my own little ego and stuff, hopefully out of the way,
Well, that's the thing. You provide the best coaching when you stop thinking about yourself. Right. So I know for me, because I've had this where I'm on calls with clients and I'm thinking about what's my agenda for this call? What am I going to say next? And if I'm not fully engaged and fully listening, I may miss something. So it's when you kind of give up that control over what's next and just really listen with, like you said, your full body. That's when sometimes that divine inspiration or whatever it is, that insight comes that you may have never expected. And I think that's the same thing we should be, for our listeners, that's the same thing we should be doing with our clients and our customers too, right? Is just having that fully engaged listening, because you never know what will come to you when you're able to put that amount of focus on what somebody's saying. And so that listening piece has been so key and so incredible, just to bring those insights.
Absolutely. And I know you do this too, where I really see it as a we when I'm working with someone. I'm going, how do I enter their world and see out through their eyes, their paradigm, their values, their beliefs? What are their sacred cows that we need to honor or work around or adjust as we go around? And that's, to me, part of the art and science of good coaching. That I think is really important to understand. And one of the things that when you had mentioned, when we talked about it before I got into coaching, because there really wasn't a lot around, I wanted to make sure I knew the distinction between coaching and therapy, because I wanted to honor, respect, and not cross that boundary. So I actually hired a number of therapists. They'd never had this happen before. I said, I want you to teach me your boundaries so that I'm coaching, I'm clear what I'm working on, and that I don't cross that, because I think that's a very important, especially I really kind of started in more of a life coaching, then moved more into the business and sales. And you had brought that comment up on that, that we ought to bring that up here, and what I learned from it.
Yeah. No, I was curious because you brought up a great point about it, which I had never thought about before, what the difference was. Because I feel like sometimes it does, the lines get a little blurry. But yeah, would you share with our listeners what that is and
Yeah, absolutely.
how you
And I
distinguish it?
think, I think I want to, in defense of you, I think they would be clear. You have gotten so much good training in sales. That's what makes it clear for you. So it's almost in your DNA. But for me, the distinction is I'm working on how are we making a future happen, or how are we attracting a certain type of future or outcome, or something that's compelling, or addressing a greater question that moves them forward. And then what's between us and them, and how do we leverage their existing gifts into the context to make this and set up context. Often I talk about working with the client to box them in so there's nowhere to go except success. And it sounds funny in the words, but that's it. Well, I have some very good therapists I know, and what happens is that's where they are. They don't exclude the future, but they have very powerful tools of going backward in time and addressed issues. And what I realized is, if I try to work with someone and everything we're doing is like a rubber band where it keeps pulling back enough, that's when I really need to potentially look at stop working with them, and because maybe there's a deeper therapeutic issue beyond what coaching will do that they need to address. Now, I have to tell you, I did have a client once that I couldn't figure out why we weren't succeeding, and he said something like he and his brother every morning like to get stoned. And I realized, I know how you're killing motivation and purpose, and I politely said, then you really should fire me. I'm not making an ethical comment on it, but as far as I know, growing up in DC, that pretty much kills the human will to move forward and focus. And I finally said it wasn't therapy, but and I'm very tactful to just kind of acknowledge that sometimes I'll acknowledge, it doesn't seem to be working. Let's take a break in this and see what else. And I want them to add it because I want to leave them in an empowered way. I don't want to ever pretend like I would know they need therapy or something else, but it's that I'm trying to move forward. Everything makes sense, and it's like a rubber band snapping them back. And that's where someone might have trauma that's just way beyond what the simple tools I have as coaching are. And that's part of what I learned in working and talking to some good therapists. And then, of course, I work to get them to bring it up. And if they mention it, I recommend them to therapists I know as well. But I've also gotten a lot of clients from therapists who said, I'm sending someone over to you. They're good, and now they need that structure and future to move forward on, and accountability. So I've been blessed to get a lot of clients from them at times where they knew they kind of took them as far as they were really wanting to go. Another thing is real important is in a licensed therapy, self-disclosure is something very important to be careful and not do. That's one of the tools that a therapist needs to manage. So in my style of coaching, self-disclosure is part of one of my main tools. If I can share a part of my life that helps them move forward in theirs, I'll do it. While in therapy, really, I've coached some therapists in passing their licensing, and at least in North Carolina, is self-disclosure is something they have to. There really is sometimes outside the ethical boundaries. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I really get if you had someone who really had identity crisis or something, you need to be careful of what you let them know about them. So another piece is me making sure, with the best of my knowledge, I'm working with someone who's, functioning well, because I give a lot of my own self and knowledge in coaching. It's one of the tools I use. So comments or ideas on this, but thanks for bringing it up that you thought it might be useful to talk about.
Yeah, well, that was such a light bulb moment for me. So when you and I met this weekend to work on the show and we talked about that, it's like, oh, that's really, it's just therapy is working on the past, coaching is the future. And I think intuitively I knew that, but I think that you defined it so clearly in that way. And it's interesting because a lot of my clients actually are in therapy at the same time. is there in coaching, and they'll bring up stuff related to a personal issue, or, clearly our personal lives tie in with our professional lives. If we're not doing well at home, we're going to struggle to make money. And my approach is always just, I'm not certified, I'm not licensed to talk with you about that, but you need to do something about that. So
Right,
talk to
right.
your therapist about that.
Talk to
We
your
ain't
therapist
touching
about
that
that. Yeah.
anymore.
Well, that's it. Well, that's why I wanted to say you probably have boundaries better than you know because you were successful in sales. Because what's the ground of a client moving into an area where this really is beyond just building some basic rapport or something like that with them. They're disclosing the level that doesn't match for the business world as well. So I think that's an important thing as well. We have some other things here that to talk about, and one of the ones that we mentioned is if you can't get a coach, what can you do? And I like you mentioned both mastermind and I call it accountability buddy. So would you kind of start off on that because I use coaches. I train people in my own personal life to be my coach. To me, a good friend doesn't agree with me on everything. He's agreeing with me to hold me accountable to be the man I want to be the better person. And so I also talk about a buddy versus a real friend. And a real friend is in your face to hold you accountable to the person you want to be, not the person you're trying to justify. But you start with mastermind. Some other ways if somehow coaching isn't available to someone right now.
Yeah. So the concept of a mastermind, a lot of people will recognize it from Think and Grow Rich, from Napoleon Hill's book. And the concept is that when we combine forces with other humans or who are on a similar path to betterment, to self-improvement, there's that combined brain share and that power behind that, where somebody may see something in your life just from a different angle than you've been seeing it. We're all here stuck in our own little worlds, our own little paradigms. And so we may have a problem with a customer, with a coworker, and we only see that from our perspective. So the power behind having that input from somebody else who has a different life experience and who has a different perspective on things is huge. And so I've been a member of a number of different masterminds over the years. I was in 2 up until very recently. I'm in 1 now. And they are so incredible. And so the concept is, if you want to form one on your own, you kind of, what I found was that I naturally met people. When I decided it was something I want to do, I started to naturally meet people who would be a great fit. But you might go to a networking event, see who you can meet there, kind of think through your LinkedIn connections, but look for people who are aggressively working to grow their business. But I would also say who are also working to become better versions of themselves, who are going to want to hold themselves and you to that higher standard. And some masterminds meet once a week, some meet once a month, some meet quarterly. That's all something up to you. For my groups, we typically meet once a month. And it's a form of accountability. So every month we have goals that we set for ourselves for that month. Our following meeting, we're reporting in on how we did on those goals. And I will say, knowing that I was going to have to come in and report to my group the following week on what I'd accomplished, that has inspired me to get some things done that I wouldn't have gotten done otherwise. And we also hash out issues. So usually, we have about 15 minutes each as we go around the circle when we meet. And so it's, how did you do on your goals and what you said you were going to do from last month? What are you struggling with right now? And then everybody kind of jumps in and offers opinions, offers some feedback. And then what are you going to commit to do between now and our next meeting? And it keeps each of us moving in that forward trajectory. And like you said, these are people who will call you out on things that your buddies may not. And there's value in that. And I've had to learn to toughen up a little bit. Because when people call it like it is, sometimes that can hurt if you're somebody who's kind of sensitive like I am, but it's been a great learning and growing experience from that. So I'm becoming more of a tough cookie from that as well. But, it goes back to the idea that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to become a better version of yourself, hang out with people who are either at equal or better levels than you are right now. If you want to become a millionaire, hang out with millionaires. Find people who are doing what you want to do. Get in their circle and learn from them, and have people who are pushing you on that path to becoming that better version of yourself. And there's so much power in that. So when you can find that core group who's going to spur you along to achieve your goals and hold you accountable, incredible things can happen from that. Have you ever done a mastermind or anything?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, what's funny is years ago, I joined a group called the Samurai Team, business team. And it was the guy who actually got me into men's work for my first book, which is Finding Our Fire, Enhancing Your Compassion to Strength. And it was Fred Boyles, and he created this accountability group where you would meet on a regular basis, and it was very structured, very timed, and then you would have specific commitments to make. And if you missed them, you had to donate to a kitty that would, $1 or $5 or something, so that you would there would be a donation that would go into. And I actually got my wife involved in it. And she said she was really worried about making sure she was on time. I took over running the group, and she said I think she was terrified, which is, being sort of dyslexic ADD. I worked hard to be accountable as the leader of the group. But that was a real. Now you could bring up issues and so forth. So I've had a number. I think they're very valuable. Getting the right mix of people, but also I want to make sure we talk about what does it mean to be coachable, because that's important in it as well. You talked about, and then there was another point in there you mentioned is in this process of working with them. There are other ways like the accountability partner or buddy, and this takes the right type of person. But this would be meeting on a weekly basis, having a structure, set an agreement. Sometimes the only way you can do is find 2 of you that could meet. Mm-hmm. And the big thing is that we as human beings generally are better at keeping our word to someone else than ourselves. And I know that's why I don't keep cookies in the house, because I can't keep my word to myself. Luckily, my wife doesn't eat sugar, so we're in good shape. But that's, to me, part of the engine behind these mastermind and accountability partner or buddy. And that structure is more meet once a week or every other week, not too much beyond it. Make sure the time is held fast and they work together. A friend of mine built a team of, I think, 3 or 4 guys that developed a software program that made about $150,000 in the first few months or something program. And one of the things he realized in the accountability aspect is they had to have a penalty if people miss. So if you missed, you had to pay in $20 or something. So it seems to be easy for us to start slacking off or getting softer with it. So to me, part of it is something that keeps it tight enough to be successful, but not so tight that we can't be human, I guess is a way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I know I've had great intentions going into relationships with accountability partners where it's like, oh, we're going to email each other every day. And I'm going to tell you who I'm going to be calling tomorrow, and you send me your list, and we're going to hit these crazy numbers every week, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to hold each other accountable. And the first time that somebody slips there and doesn't hold the other one accountable, it can start to derail. So I think you have to look for that person who, again, is just laser focused on hitting their goals. And you have to be that person too. It's a commitment to both of you. But there is a lot of power in having someone outside of you to report to, as long as you both are disciplined about keeping up that structure and not letting it slack. And I think that's where there's the power of having skin in the game. And that's where, I think if you can afford to pay a coach to hold you accountable, you're going to be most likely to reach your goals. I have a lot
Great
of
point.
clients who say, I'm not missing this call because I know it's costing me X amount of money. And if it wasn't costing them anything, they could probably easily miss it, So it's the same with accountability partners. Think about, okay, if we slack off here, if we miss this, how can I maybe have some financial skin in the game? Maybe it's less than you would pay a coach, but what can you do financially to make it hurt if you miss that target, if you miss that goal? And then the flip side is maybe there's some rewards for you hitting certain goals and certain benchmarks along the way as well. But yeah, it's looking for some outside accountability, whether it's an accountability partner, a mastermind. You can even, outside of your mastermind, you can spin off accountability partners. So in one of my groups, every month we would have different accountability partners and we would just switch. And so that kind of gave the 2 levels of success, right?
Yeah.
So extra security that you're not going to fall off and lapse on your goals. So yeah, that's there's a number of different ways to do it, but that would be my take on the accountability partners piece. You
And
have to
and
find a
you
way to make it
talked
hurt.
about having important of having rewards, especially if you're in sales, because you're pretty much a solopreneur in a lot of ways. Even though you might work with a company, you are being held accountable at a level almost like you were self-employed, and you know that. That's part of why I like sales professionals is they run just like a small business owner, and it's interesting because some of us are motivated by moving towards something and others are moving away from. So part of working with people and coaching is finding out, do they need something that seems to be, I'm going to lose something if I don't act, or do they need to be someone who says, I'm going to gain something if I act? And we can be that way in different contexts. Like, the example in cars is often people who buy a Volvo are what are generally in their life risk adverse or moving away from. Nothing wrong or right on it. We need both. Someone who buys like a Maserati or something, or one of those smaller cars that just goes, they might move towards. So finding out what motivates our clients, but also individually finding out in the context, what do you need, is an important aspect too.
How do you find that out? So if I'm just Elyse and I'm a salesperson and I won't need to hold myself accountable, how do I find out whether I'm towards or away
Oh,
motivated?
that's a great thing. The first thing is know it's context dependent. So what I would do is I'd be asking you about what motivated you in the past. And for example, one sales guy goes, I was the most winning person when I had the first 2 kids, and I went, they're going to starve to death if I don't get out the door.
Mm.
And that's a moving away from. And then I look to see if there are other patterns and it fits. Or they go, I wanted that boat so bad, I was willing to do whatever it took to get it. Well, that's a moving towards. So
Hmm.
you're looking, usually we don't change that drastically around those things. So what motivates them in the context is sometimes asking from the past some questions and listening for, is that away from or towards something? Is that
Hmm.
and the thing is I don't always necessarily spell it out to the person, because they might go, oh my God, I don't want to be that. I need to be positive all the time. Well, you are what you are. You need to use the tools that are in your body to motivate you to move forward, that are
Mhm.
existing. I say therapists work on attempting to create real change in people. As a coach, my goal is to have to change as few behaviors as possible and get the maximum payoff from it. So I'm kind of going in the
Mm.
opposite direction. How can we take a skill they might already have over here, like and transfer it over? I give one example of a guy I worked with who just had a problem trusting people at work. And I said, well, what else do you do? And he says, well, I train dogs. And I go, well, do you just walk up to dogs and just hug them and like them immediately? And went, oh, good heavens, no. Dogs have different temperaments. You have to understand the temperaments of the dogs. You have to see how uniquely they are. You have to develop the boundaries that are appropriate for each dog. And I'm going, in my mind, this is the thing missing in his business space. So I
Mhm.
said, could you do me a favor, but please don't tell anyone, start treating people at work like dogs. Now, doesn't that sound hilarious? But anyway, he basically got promoted at least once. And I said, make sure you do not spell out your strategy to me. Like, sometimes I've worked with men and go, this is called magic. Don't show your wife the magic. Just do the magic. They'll go, I want to show you what I did to get these flowers here. So, and then kills the magic. And then they wonder why they're angry. But that would be an example of, here's a resource over here. I'm going, my gosh, if we can move this over here and just view it in this context, then we could get this person on fire. So that's another thing to me in coaching, is that idea of they already have all the skills. They just might not be in the right place. So when I taught a coaching class years ago called Key Coaching, and sadly was taking care of my parents. The website got taken over or bought, but I still had the class. And that was one of the skills, is what are the assumptions I make in the role of coach, studying what I did when I was my most effective. And one is, they have all the tools they need. I need to just access them and help them get access for them. And I love that, because that has I assume they're whole, and I'm a catalyst that's helping move a few things around to get them on fire. So that was a long answer to your question, but hopefully entertaining to our listeners too.
I like the concept of treating people like dogs. I feel like I'm going to need to create a coaching module around that.
That's right. You got to give me at least some credit for it. Then we'll both be in trouble.
Brilliance.
I want to talk a little bit about coachability. What does that mean? Because that's a easy way to beat people up in a corporate space. Great stuff about Myers-Briggs, but when it rolled out in the corporate world, to me, it was new ways to beat up management, to beat up their employees. So I want to take a few moments to talk about, what does it mean to be coachable, and get your views on it and share some views on it.
Yeah, I think, to me, the biggest word that comes to mind in conjunction with that is just open-mindedness. How open-minded are you to new ideas, to new strategies, to a different perspective? If you know that you are just dead set on your belief system and your structure and your way of doing things, and that ain't going to change, you're probably not a good fit for coaching, right? You have to be open-minded to somebody else's ideas. I think the flip side of that too is also being willing to speak up. So sometimes on coaching calls, I'll offer a suggestion or a strategy that may have worked well for somebody else. And if you're sitting there thinking, there's no way this is ever going to work for me, but you don't want to hurt my feelings, so you don't say anything, well, we didn't really make any progress there. So it's about it being a dialogue and an open conversation where you say, hey, honestly, Elyse, I don't see how this is going to work in my life. Because some of the suggestions won't. Not everybody's the same. Everyone's different. And so part of it is being willing to speak up. And so it's really both sides to me. It's how open-minded are you to new ideas, as well as how willing are you to offer feedback when you don't see how something is going to work for you.
Yeah, excellent points. And some for me is setting up the context in your mind where you're coachable. It's like, if you had a sales coach and you hired him as a sales coach and they were trying to give you relationship advice, you go, that's kind of outside the boundary of what I hired you for. So to me is a certain level of surrendering to the coach can only occur in trust if you understand the boundaries of where they operate on. And that those are some funny words, but it's what I needed to do to work with the coach. I'm allowing them to coach me in these domains, and these other domains, if we go outside, I may not go there. So that's, to me, one of them. And the other thing is often I find when I meet somebody and talk to them, I can find out pretty quickly if I can't see a vision or a possibility of where they want to go. If I can't get bought into it, I have no business coaching him. So if you came to me,
Mm.
Elyse, and said, I'm 72 years old and I want you to coach me to become an astronaut within a year. And I ask questions, I can't get around I can't be bought into the possibility of that, then I think it's irresponsible for me to take you on as a client. So I have kind of like these tests that I talked about in my training to go through to decide, is it a win-win to move forward with the client, which can be difficult if a company gives you the client, of course, but I'm sure, their process is there too, where you can say, we are agreeing to not work or put it on hold for now too.
Yeah, and that ties in so strongly to the vision piece. I mean, God, there's so much here that we could probably do like 20 calls on
Right, right,
how
right.
to do this. But yeah, I think another part of it is having that vision for your life and then also being open to somebody else guiding you along and making that vision happen. And that's something that whether or not you have a coach, you should be looking at, what is my vision for my life? What's the grander picture here? Because making sales calls every single day can get really exhausting if it's not tied in with a greater purpose and with a greater vision of what you're accomplishing and what you're doing. And for me, that actually ties in with one of the last things I wanted to bring up, which is you have to know your numbers. This is one of the things that we do with our clients. This is also something that you need to do on your own, is you have to know exactly what your numbers are to reach your goal. And it's really a pretty simple process. You probably do something very similar with your clients, but one of the first things I do on a call with the client is, what's your income goal for this year? What is that number? And then, okay, cool. What's your average commission off of a sale? And then I actually divide that by 11 months rather than 12 months because I want to back out some time for them to go on vacation and over the holidays. Even if they're working, their customers probably aren't working, so it's going to be harder to reach them. So what do you have to make every month over 11 months to hit that? And how many customers is that going to take? How many meetings does it take you to close one customer? How many phone calls and touches does it take you to get that one meeting? And then you just really simply back that into, what do you need to do just every day, very simply on an activity level, to hit that goal? And one of the little things that you can do, that's such a small tweak, but it really helps motivate, is you need to know what you make every time you pick up that phone. And, I know we have a lot of listeners here who they have a very in-depth sales process, multi-touch point. They're calling, they're connecting on LinkedIn, they're sending emails. So I know that your sales process, if you're a listener, may be 6, 12 months or longer here. But even then, I think one of the biggest activities that a lot of times we shy away from is picking up the phone. I would say a lot of us are probably hiding behind our email, hiding behind LinkedIn, but we know if we want to actually have that human element and human touch, we need to pick up the phone. So one of the first things I have my clients do is I help them figure out, what do they earn every time they pick up the phone? And it's very simple. If you're tracking your phone calls and you know what you're earning every month, then you're able to calculate that. And it's great. I had a client the other day realize that she makes $800 every time she picks up the phone. She was like, girl, you better, that phone better be on fire, right? And not everybody is that much, but just simple little things. You have to know your numbers. You have to know your activity. We have a saying at Southwestern, you cannot expect if you are not willing to inspect. So you can't expect great results if you're not willing to inspect your daily activity. And then the other piece of that too is you have to make the mental shift from defining success as to whether or not a customer buys from you, because you can't control that. We can't control whether or not somebody buys from us. So it's reshifting your definition of success into, did I do what I set out to accomplish today? Did I do the activity that I said I was going to do? Did I bring the heat? Did I approach my activity with passion? And did I just simply do those numbers that I committed to doing? And if I did that, I know that over time, the numbers will work out, the averages will work out, and I'll hit my income goal. And so it's about, put your pride in your activity, not your outcomes. But you have to know what your activity is in order to do that. So that's a huge focus of me with my clients. And then again, every salesperson should know exactly what their numbers are. And if you don't, don't do it while you're driving, but when you get home, or if you're home right now, grab a pad of paper, sit down and write out, what are my numbers? What do I make per dial? What did I make last year? And what do I need to do this year in order to hit that income goal? And then just start focusing on that. Forget the outcome. The outcome will take care of itself. So that's my 2 cents.
That was more than 2 cents. I'm going to say that was a good $50 tip there.
Ooh, sweet.
And I think that was wonderfully said, but I just want to acknowledge, and knowing you, Elyse, you're not just having them do it. I've watched you do it. You've worked out what you need to make this year, how you're working it backwards. You shared a little bit offline of your own story of working backwards on the goals and generating it, and how you showed the real emotional courage to step up to the plate to be a coach, where you go, I'm leaving the company, I've got this much money, and I need to make this work, and there's no back door. So when people are going, I'm scared to do this, you've earned the right. You've done the work and felt the fear that they might have, and how you go that it's the answers are over there, and keeping it moving. So I do want to really acknowledge you for clearly walking your talk, and something I've known, and I've certainly learned a lot of tips from you. And it's also what I learn in life is sometimes you kind of forget things that you knew, and then someone will come along and re-inspire you, and you've done that for me in many areas. Certainly added a lot to the Link Into Sales show with how do we improve our show. Once you bring on a third person, you go, wow, I'm not putting up with this lack of workability here that we've put up with before. Now you have another piece of it. So right on with that. And then there's one more question that you brought up that's important, is why are coaches helpful? And where's the first step with it? We really want this to be educational. We're not here to sell our wares or anything else. This was I really wanted, and you did too, to talk about our trade and give it window into it. So
Well, first of all, thank you for all of that. And if you guys can't tell, Martin and I are just really passionate about this, and we get really excited, and we were like, can we use the show to talk about this because we like it so much? But we put together just a quick list of why coaching is helpful, and I think we've covered some of these already, but I'm going to go through them, and then if we want to flesh out any more of these, really just to sum it up, it's keeping your word to yourself versus someone else, and who are you going to be more likely to keep your word to? I think for most of us, we can probably agree that we're more likely to keep our word to somebody else, particularly when the second factor is in place, which is just having something at stake. What do you stand to gain versus to lose? And a lot of times that financial accountability piece, it hurts if you throw whatever it is that you pay for your coaching calls out the window. Like, that hurts. And so when you have that at stake, you're much more likely to actually make it happen and to show up. And that's where the magic happens. I think you brought up this great point, which is our third point, which is it allows you to, you have to set clear boundaries so that you can be coachable as well. So defining those boundaries is really, really key. This is one that I'd like you to elaborate on. We often have all the resources, but in a different context. I'd love to hear from you a little bit more about your thoughts on that, because we also have that, as another reason why coaching is helpful.
Yeah, the problem is the things that we're most gifted at look like breathing to us. So sometimes we need an outside person to help us see our own greatness. And I remember I had a heck of a time I was in field service in IBM, and Evelyn Maracas at the time, she's got married, but that was her maiden name, and real sharp gal, worked her way into IBM, had been a welder at Sharon Harris. This was one tough chick and smart. And she was like, she held up our communicator where we just got nonstop changing data coming in all day. And she goes, any monkey can do this job. And I said, Evelyn, I'm not really that good a monkey at doing this job. I'm trying to find it, but she had a gift at it. She could manage things, multiple variables, changing dynamics, changing schedules, where someone else set them. really, really well. And it was not a gift of mine. But, she saw me speaking and coaching and worked with me. In fact, she's loaned me one of the chairs downstairs is one of her, I think, her mom's favorite rocking chair. And she goes, I want you to do your coaching magic in this chair. And she goes, you really have a gift in this. And it took me a while to find it. And I sometimes we need someone else to hear it and give it back to us. But we also have to open our mind and heart up to allow someone else to contribute to us so it can get in. So, people keep saying you're at X and you notice the inner voice keeps invalidating it. Maybe you should shut up for a while and listen to the outside world, in that. And so that's what I meant by that. They're hearing. That's why when I'm listening, a good coach might hear, oh, they have this gift in this area. We just need to move this over to here. And so that was a long answer to it, but that's it. That another value of the coaching of getting ourselves in touch with our greatness. Now, of course, if you're a narcissist that think you're great at everything without any question, then you probably don't need it.
You're already in touch. You got that covered. We also talked about how do you move towards or how do you move away in a different context, and I think we covered that. One of the little nuggets I'll throw in there just for myself, I think I'm a moving towards person. I do drive an irresponsible car that I just decided I would find a way to pay for. So it's like the more you talk, I'm realizing, yep, I'm moving towards. But one of the little benchmarks that I do to kind of gamify the sales process for myself and for my clients is I just set certain little benchmarks that are relatively easy to achieve, and then I give myself a reward. So for me, it's for every 5 people who I meet who enroll in coaching, I have a very small reward that I treat myself to. It's nothing crazy, but it helps me work towards something. It breaks down my goals into chunks a little bit better. And aside from the intrinsic value of, wow, I just helped 5 people get into a situation that's going to change their lives this year. It also gives me the instant gratification as well of, cool, I get to go buy whatever it is. It may be like $100 at Pier 1, right? Nothing crazy. But I would say look at doing that too for yourself. How can you break down your bigger goals into smaller short-term chunks? And again, just to use the word gamify, I think it makes it a little bit more fun. So that's, anyway, all of that is just to say that once you identify whether you're moving towards or moving away, how do you implement that? What do you do with that? And then the final reason we have here, which I'd like you to elaborate on a little bit, of why coaching is helpful, is focusing on context and environment versus developing more discipline. Could you expound on that a little, my friend?
Most of my life, I beat myself up for not enough discipline. And then I learned some very good veterans that I admired and said, you have so much more discipline. He says, what I did is I practiced something so much it became an automatic behavior. And I realized discipline is to me overrated versus if you really understand what is the internal and external context that's going to motivate me to move forward, and how do I, what I call, box myself in to the path I want to succeed. And that's, to me, it's a very funny words, but it's how do I set myself up so there's nowhere but succeed. And the simplest example is if you have no willpower with cookies, keep them out of the house instead of beating yourself up that you're eating them. And to me, part of the job as a coach and the value of a good coach is helping them set up those things. I'll tell a quick story on this. Is worked with somebody who was a really top sales guy, and he worked from the ground up. He had a cheap little desk, a cheap little chair, a phone, and I think he said a picture from the mechanic shop of the equivalent of the swimsuit issue or something on his wall, something like that. Okay, you got it, and then he got into getting the money and getting a better office, and he started diving in his success. And he said, You know what I did? I sold it all. I went to a flea market. I got a crappy desk. I got a little thing. I went into a simpler room. I gave up my big room, and I started getting on action again. So that's the wisdom. What does it take to succeed? Not should I be some way, or should I have done it, or should I be better than this? This is what works for me, and understanding workability with a coach. So that's my comment on that piece of it.
That's
I,
so good.
I
Yeah.
want to have one more story that I love. Of this one guy came to me and said, I want to get out of the field. My boss yells at me, and he's crazy and everything else. And then he told me what his goals were, how he wanted to retire and what he wanted to do and his skills. I went, you're in the best place to make that money. I can coach you in dealing with the crazy boss that yells at you if you'll stick with me. But if you want me to help you leave the field and make that money, I have nothing to offer you. I don't know where to go. So we worked together, and after about a year, I remember he came back, and basically I got him so that he really got that the boss yelling at him had nothing to do with it. Everyone else was rattled, and the boss would hold up his stats and say, this is why all of you are a bunch of liars. Bob here is the only worthwhile person in the department. That was my client, and he had exceeded quotas and moved forward. So it's, that was an example of, this is the only place to go. We need to charge that thing. And I didn't have magic therapy. I said, you just need to build a shield where you're in your head literally excited when he starts yelling, reframe it. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm moving forward. And then I also taught him how he needed to go in and basically almost attack his boss in the same context to get his attention when he got quota. And I don't mean physically, I meant the way he voiced it. And this guy only respected that. So it's, that was the example. And I think, at least we talked about this in coaching, is what behavioral actions are needed. And by us as coaches developing as many behavioral actions in our own repertoire, then we can coach them. And you did a lot of that in your own personal development. You talked about developing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it starts with the mindset shift, but then it goes to, our mindset dictates our behavior and our actions. And, I'll kind of wrap it up with this. When you were talking about, boxing ourselves in for success, recently I've been struggling with like late night. I want to sit there and I want to watch YouTube videos. It's so bad. It's so bad. I'm really strong in the mornings. I wake up, I go, 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 go all day. And funny enough, this is something I share with my mastermind group. Like, this is an area where I'm struggling. Come like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, when I really should be following up on my tasks from the day, I want to sit there and watch YouTube. Like, I've already gotten rid of cable. I've already gotten rid of TV. I've gotten rid of Netflix. We've gotten rid of everything in the house that could be distracting, but I was still finding the YouTube, still coming to the YouTube late at night. So I actually found an app that will block YouTube for me from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m. So again, it's setting yourself up so that you don't even have to exercise that discipline muscle. If you know it's weak in a certain area, find a way until it's stronger to set yourself up to where you don't have to worry about it. And it's kind of like babysitting yourself.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But it works. It works.
That's
I'm not on YouTube.
And we'll wrap up with, instead of our regular tip tonight, Greg Hyer got a great question from someone. Is there still a place for good old handwritten notes, and are they still relevant? And Elyse, I think all three of us are passionate on this, and we really want to get more questions from our listeners. So thank you for who contacted Greg with this. Elyse, I'm going to let you answer that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yes, is my answer.
That was
a resounding yes. That was easy. You look for ways to stand out in your follow-up, right? Anytime you're following up or trying to reach a customer, how can you stand out? Few enough people do handwritten notes today that when you do, you're going to stand out. Now, I think you also want to keep in mind the generation of the person who you're writing to. If you're doing it to somebody in their young 20s, it may not have the same effect as somebody who's 30s or older. But I absolutely think so. I'm a big fan. I send them quite a bit, both to thank people for booking meetings with me, booking events, and then to thank them afterwards as well. And as far as I know, people like it. No one's come back and said they hated it yet, but I think it really does help you stand out. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely correct, and you're the queen of authentic acknowledgement. So keep it up. I love it, and I really do. I'm someone who does my best to catch people doing things right and acknowledge it. You can't do it superficially, and I think you model it well. But also, I still enjoy. You're right, the handwritten notes, and excellent. Well, we want to thank all our listeners. This was a special show, and Elyse, thanks for playing along with us and doing it. We finally decided we'd do our own show here, and we want to get your feedback. Do you like the show? Do you know, our goal is social selling, but we might mix some other things in. So we want to hear more of what you want. We want to mention you can find us on Stitcher, on iTunes. Go to Linking into Sales, and you'll find all the podcasts. Greg does a great job. He does a lot of the heavy lifting on getting it all edited and put together. But we also have a platform, socialselling.training, socialselling.training, not .com, where we are offering 2 free courses. Fundamentals, profile of Twitter, and setting up your profile on LinkedIn. And this is a powerhouse of resources where you can get a certificate at the end to add to your LinkedIn profile. You do have to pass the test to move through it, but that's something, and Elyse is giving her input as we're building it out, and we'll talk about that more here. But Elyse, I'll let you have the final word, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick note, a little love note to our listeners, just to let you know how much we appreciate you guys. We know you have so many options when it comes to what you listen to, and we are so, so grateful that you guys, that you tune in, that you listen. We really, really try to deliver value. I want to thank you guys personally for being so welcoming to me. I know Greg and Martin had a really, really good thing going for a long time before they ventured out and brought me in, and it's always a risk, and I've gotten some really, really nice messages on LinkedIn. So thank you guys. You're just an incredible group, and we love the opportunity to come here and try to serve you with our message. So with that, I'm going to say thank you and pass it back to you.
Yep, this is Martin Brossman
and Elyse Archer.